All right, so tell us a little bit about your hydrocephalus and the resulting conditions that you endured as a child.
So I was born, yes, with hydrocephalus, and at 3 weeks old, I had my first brain surgery. Ever since then, I live with what's called a BP shunt in the back of my head. It drains the cerebral spinal fluid and helps with the condition. I've been lucky enough to not really have any complications with hydrocephalus, but along the way, I have endured other medical conditions. First one being hypotonia. So when I was 18 months old, that was the first time I actually took my first steps. It took me a very long time to walk, and then from there, I had years and years of physical therapy. I wore feet braces to learn how to walk correctly. I used to walk on my tippy toes. When I was little, I used to have to get Botox on my feet, like shots of Botox, because my feet wouldn't go down. So that was very interesting for a little girl to have to go through. And then on top of all of that, I was diagnosed with a seizure disorder when I was 8 years old. Luckily, I've grown out of that. But let me tell you, out of every condition that I've had, I have to say the seizures were probably the scariest for me, at least, because it was always kind of like walking on eggshells. You never know when the next seizure was going to happen, and it was a long time. It was basically all of my childhood that I had the seizures, and then on top of all the MRI testings and everything for the hydrocephalus. So it was a big journey, long.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it was. It's yeah, no, for sure. You've endured like a lot of stuff, and where you are now, which we're obviously going to get into, is absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So as a child, despite having epilepsy or seizures and your hydrocephalus, what type of supports or therapies did you participate in?
So first of all, my parents were my biggest support system, and they still are today. They really went above and beyond to make sure that I had the best care. I had NYU doctors for my neurology and everything, and I went through years and years of physical therapy. My mom took me to every single physical therapy appointment, never missed a beat. And then my parents, on top of I had like 3 to 4 days a week of physical therapy, and on top of that, my parents really still made sure I was doing my exercises. And it's ironic because I love physical fitness now, but asked me if I loved physical therapy, and I hated it. I hated every minute of it. I have to say, this whole experience was really the three of us. I'm an only child, and me and my parents really got through it together.
That's amazing. So you did physical therapy, but was physical therapy the only thing that you partook in? So you obviously had your appointments at the
Right.
at NYU, neurologists.
So so physical therapy was the physical aspect of it. I had a lot of that, but I had a lot of testings all the time, like EEG testings to make sure the brain waves were good with the seizures. That was probably the most annoying thing in the world. It's when they glue a bunch of wires on your head and you have to sit there for like 3 days and do nothing. And as a little girl who wants to go out and play with her friends, that's the worst thing you can ask her to do. So that was one. A lot of MRIs, and MRIs were for me, they were like detrimental to me because I always had to stay still. I couldn't move, and it was just it wasn't fair for someone my age to be going through all that stuff. So just a lot of testing all the time. Always checking out with doctors, and just always physical therapy. I always say, New York City is the greatest city in the world, but for me, I always have those memories. So
right. Growing up and being different than others is challenging, and going to therapy, playing soccer, doing sports, arts and crafts, it's not fun. I totally get it.
Yeah. It's difficult.
But you've come a far way. So
thank you. Yeah. So I'm very blessed.
Yeah. So what was it like growing? How did your conditions affect you? Well, you talked about physically, but academically, socially, family life.
I was very lucky enough that the hydrocephalus didn't hinder me academically. It didn't make things hard for me to learn. However, due to all the missing of school with the doctor appointments and the testings and the surgeries, I missed a lot at one point. So it used to be hard for me to catch up, especially like in the early grammar school years. That was difficult. So that, for the academic part, that there was that. It was always hard for me to feel like I fit in, not just because I had all these issues, but because they were very hard to explain to a kid my age. You know, they weren't outwardly noticeable. There are a lot of other medical conditions out there that I feel young kids kind of understand, they grasp a little bit, but mine was very different. I have a scar on my stomach from the surgery, from the brain surgery. And I remember kids always used to be like, oh, why do you have a scar on your stomach if you have a brain problem? And it was just, for me, it was so hard to explain all the time, and I didn't want to explain, and I would get angry, and I shoved it out of my mind. For me, it was a very it was a tough situation.
It was a tough situation. It's never easy. I feel that when you experience this, but post high school, I mean, you kind of grew up in the New York City area, but post high school and you go off to college, that's really when people kind of come like full circle. When you have difference, everyone has their own set of differences, and
right.
But when you're a child, it's you don't really know what's going on. It can be difficult. And so you were very fortunate enough not to have any learning challenges.
Right.
That's love. That's great. So when you were born, your parents had been told by the doctors that you may be mentally disabled, unable to do things physically that other kids would be able to do. You wouldn't be able to accomplish your dreams and aspirations. Knowing this, were there times growing up that you felt like a failure?
So, like I said, my parents are my biggest support system, and I've never luckily felt like a failure because they have always made it a point to make me feel like such a winner. And they've always made me realize that no matter what I'm going through, I can achieve anything, My parents never victimized the situation ever. If you saw the three of us walking in the street or going to a family event, you would never know that we just spent a week with all that physical therapy or at a doctor's appointment hearing all this news. My parents were very positive all the time. So having that positivity in our household really helped me to know that my dreams can be achievable.
That's wonderful. My parents are very positive. Well, anyways, it's great to have parents. You're very lucky to have parents like them.
I am. They're awesome. They really are.
So one of your biggest challenges growing up was your physical strength. You had very little physical strength. And so when was the moment that you decided that you wanted to start going to the gym and feel better physically and mentally?
So it's really funny. It all goes back to my sophomore year in high school, and it goes back to my mom as well. I will never forget, my parents taught this all the time. I was sitting in a health class after lunch when I would just finish my bags of Doritos and my big unhealthy sandwich. And I'm sitting in health class, and we had to watch this video about how meats are processed. And I don't know what clicked in me, but I went home that day and I said to my parents, I said, Mom, Dad, throw out all the meat that we have in the fridge. I said, we need to get organic meat. You don't even know what's going on in the world. And I don't even know what, from that moment, I started a little I started researching. And then at that point too, my mom started Weight Watchers, and I started seeing her results. And at that point in my life, I was just getting off of the seizure medication. I was getting weaned off of it. And because of the seizure medication, I had gained a lot of weight. That was one of the things that came along with it. So I was ready, sophomore year. I went to an all-girls school. I wanted to look good. So I started, okay, mom's on Weight Watchers, like maybe I can try it. So I did a little bit with her, and we did it together, started losing some weight. And then she said, I know you don't like sports, because at that point I was really into singing. She said, I know you don't like sports, but maybe let's try and go to the gym together. So we went to the gym one day, and we just started out, on the treadmill. And after time and time being there, I was like, wow, this isn't a team sport. I don't have to compete against anybody but me. And I'm actually feeling strong for once. I'm not feeling like the girl that's being left behind. And that's how I always felt. I talk about a section in my book how I hated certain things in school or certain holidays, because I would always feel like I'm just being the one that's left behind. Mm-hmm. And at that moment in the gym, I didn't feel left behind. I felt kind of like on top of the world. So I educated myself. That's what I do when I get into something. I really like to educate myself. And from there, I just got into it more and more.
And so then when you went off to college, you kind of had, like, when did you know that you wanted to be a personal trainer and a sports nutritionist?
So I went off to college with the thought in my head that I was going to come out and be this big, successful mechanical engineer. And
okay.
Yes, that was what I went into college for at first. And as I was in college, I'm a very studious student. I love getting good grades. I study very hard. I take pride in my work. I do. But when I was in college, I started, like, instead of studying late at night, I would make sure to go to bed on time so that I could wake up and get my workout in. I would start writing down workouts and nutrition plans for myself. And instead of researching how to build a bridge, I was researching, what vitamins are good and things like that. And I started to see how my interests were really shifting. And so that's when I really got serious about thinking, oh, maybe this is for me. Maybe personal training is for me. And I was lucky. The gym I was working at the time was like, you know what, Sophia, we see you here all the time, and people ask us all the time for you to train them, but you can't because you're not certified. So please get certified and you can come work for us. So a lot of people saw my passion in the gym, and I think they really liked that, because I always say that the best thing you can see in a trainer is when the trainer works out and does what they're telling, everybody else to do. Because I don't think that when I think about me, myself being a personal trainer and nutritionist, I don't think of it as a job. I think of it as I'm just living out my passion, and I'm being lucky enough to help others.
Right. No, that's great. I mean, and that's what work is, quote unquote, called at its best, when you're working, but you don't feel like you're working, you're really enjoying something that you really like. And it's technically not work in your mind.
My dad always tells me, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Exactly. So going back actually to, like, your physical strength and all of that, how did you get to a point where you felt, at your maximum as to, your physical strength? How did you accomplish that in the gym? Was it weights? Was it, equipment? I assume, something of each.
So to build up strength, it was definitely, I had a lot of guidance between just, I got along really well with, the big muscle heads in the gym that helped me out. I had a personal trainer at one point myself. He really helped me. So weights were definitely what made me stronger. And at one point I was so set on, that whole bodybuilding mentality. I need to lift this amount of weight. I need to do this much. But as I've gotten more into fitness, I've also learned that, there are certain things that, even though I am strong now, there are certain things that I do have a little, I don't want to say limitations, they're not limitations, but I'll always have a little bit of imbalances. So I always have to work a little bit harder in different ways, and certain lifts might not be for my body. I really love endurance training. That is something that at first I wasn't really focused on because I just wanted to build up the strength. But now I see that, endurance training makes me happy. So I add a little bit more of that. It was all a little bit of trial and error, but definitely to build up the strength, it was the weights. And I still weight lift every day. But I've learned what works for my body now and what doesn't. And I've learned what my body wants to do because I don't want to force it to do something that it doesn't.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so now you are a personal fitness trainer, fitness trainer, as well as a sports nutritionist. And so you have your own practice called SRG Fitness. So it's SRG Fitness, and it's in Yonkers. Yeah. And tell us a little bit about your wellness and fitness studio and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
So SRG Fitness obviously stands for my name, Sophia Rose Gigante, but I also made it stand for strength, resilience, and growth because that's what I like to practice and what I like to preach. Now, when I tell people, when people ask me about my practice, when people ask me, oh, what do I get when I come train at SRG Fitness? I tell them you're not just going to get a personal trainer. I consider myself a health coach. When you come to me, we cover all aspects of health and wellness. So if you come to me and you're having a bad day, we talk about anxiety. We get you through your anxiety. I'm not there to kill you in every workout. If that's what you want, you're coming and that's what you're going to get. But if you're coming just to, you want to walk up the stairs easier, you want to carry packages and not be out of breath, this is the place for you. Every part of life is covered at SRG Fitness. Health, wellness, overall well-being, and nutrition. Nutrition is such a big part of wellness. I mean, people, you can work out every day, but if your nutrition isn't intact, what are you doing with your body? And I feel like I don't want people to be intimidated by fitness. I think that's a big thing that people, they get intimidated a lot. So I really try and show them that you don't have to be scared of working out. It's not always walking into a gym and like, oh, I have to lift this much weight. It's not about that.
So do you, so is it just one-on-one or do you host group classes?
So it's one-on-one, but I do a few small group classes, and I also do a lot of, couples come to me and work out together. I have a lot of sisters, cousins, like a bunch of 2 people, 3 people, but a lot of one-on-ones, and a lot of people, they really like that because they feel comfortable being one-on-one instead of in a big gym with a lot of people. And another big part of my business and my facility is that I train a lot of people with special needs.
So what type of special needs do you see? Or what are the most common special needs that you see?
I have a few clients with autism, which I'm so very proud of them because they've overcome so much. I have a lot of stroke victim clients, which again, when they first came to me, a lot of them said, my doctor said I'll never be able to do this again. And one of my clients now, he's doing push-ups and planking and doing all this stuff that he never thought he'd be able to do ever again. I have a lot of clients with high anxiety problems, and we try and work through fitness and health, and instead of, them being anxious on a daily basis, coming to me and doing fitness and talking really helps them with their anxiety. And I've struggled with anxiety in the past due to all my issues, so I really can, I know what they're feeling. And yeah, so just things like that. I really love helping the special needs. Lately, because I've been getting myself out there in the Hydrocephalus Association, I have been lucky enough to train a few clients with hydrocephalus, which have been a very cool experience for me because up until now, I've actually never met anybody else with the condition.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to be honest, it was kind of weird, but weird in a good way.
Why did you feel like it was weird?
It was weird in a good way because I spent my whole life trying to explain to people what this condition was, and nobody ever understood it. And now I'm talking to someone that understands it. And it's like, wow, this is weird, but it's cool. Somebody finally gets it. And they were telling me things, asking me questions like, oh, do you have balance issues, and things that I wouldn't even think about that could be due to the hydrocephalus. And I just thought it was awesome.
No, yeah. No, it's amazing to meet somebody you kind, like you said, you can relate to them in a different manner. So that's amazing. And it's your studio, SRG Fitness. Is it just you, or do you work with other trainers as well?
Right
Okay,
now,
it's just you.
it's just me, yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. So now as like a personal trainer and sports nutritionist, has her own company, it's just you. How does this make you feel? You've accomplished so much in your life now, and when you were a child, your parents basically were told that you wouldn't be able to reach your dreams or aspirations, you'd be mentally disabled. How does it make you feel looking back?
Right now, I feel like a badass. I feel like I've overcome and defied the odds. And my mission now is to show everybody else that they can do the exact same thing and that nothing should be in their way. They're going to have setbacks. Don't get me wrong, everybody has setbacks, but nothing is impossible.
Amazing. Yeah. And so how do your parents?
My parents are so proud of me, and they're just very happy. And, my parents, I went through a lot personally and physically, but my parents, seeing not only just a child, but their child and their only child, for them it was hard. They were new parents, but not only were they new parents, now they had to learn about a new condition that just like me and nobody else knowing about it, they didn't know about it. So it was a lot. So they're just very relieved and happy and pushing me to achieve every other goal that I have.
Amazing. Fitness and health, a lot of this is all clearly very important to one's body. Obviously, as you're in your profession, how do you think society perceives health and fitness? Do you think it's underrated, or do you think it's about right? Do you think there should be more awareness on it?
I think that health and fitness needs to have more awareness on the overall benefits of it. I think that health and fitness right now, it's like an up and coming thing. People are really starting to educate themselves, but I still think that it's not like whenever somebody has a physical or a condition or something, I feel like health and fitness isn't the go-to thing to try and help it still. And that's what I want. I want health and fitness to be the new medicine. Because I think that it has so much. I've seen it in all my clients, and I've seen it in my special needs clients. It is medicine. It does the body good, and it can be used as medicine. And I think that although it is popular and people want to stay in shape and be healthy, it's still not the number one thing that needs to be preached, that is preached, and it needs to be preached. So that's how I feel health and fitness. I want to see it grow in that sense. I want people to go towards that first before looking at all the negatives of their condition.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I work out 5 days a week. I love the endorphin rush. Yeah. And I agree with you. It should be headed in that type of direction and not just looked at something like getting fit. Even if you're not losing weight, just getting fit makes you feel good.
Exactly. And like I said, I want health and fitness to be the new medicine for people.
Mm-hmm.
To know that there's so many other benefits than just looking good and even feeling good. There's so many things that come from health and fitness, and it should be used as medicine.
I'm with you on that for sure. So you're writing a book that's going to be out in September. Obviously, you don't want to spoil anything. Was there anything that you want to mention about your book?
So my book, it's called Strength, Resilience, Growth.
Okay.
And it is coming out in September. And September is also Hydrocephalus Awareness Month, so it's good timing. My book is about my life, how I've overcome my challenges, and there's a lot of things in it that I'm just excited for people to read, because I think a lot of people can relate. Even, people, okay, they don't have hydrocephalus, but they can relate to my feelings or something that they were going through. I always felt like the outcast in high school. I never felt like I fit in for 4 years. I was always very quiet just because of my own, I went through a lot as a kid and I didn't know how to express myself. So I think a lot of people can really get that. And I don't think there's a lot of stories out there that are as open as this one is going to be. Let's put it
that way. It's amazing. So how did you create the book, quote unquote? Did you, like, as a child, keep journal entries of your life? Or obviously memories from pictures, your parents talking to their parents? How did it all come about?
So I'll do a little spoiler for this part.
Okay.
There's a part in the book where I talk about how at one point in my life when I was a little girl, I promised myself that I would never ever address what happened to me. That from that point on, I would just live my life as if nothing happened. And that was probably at that time when I was younger, it was an okay promise. But as I got older, it was probably the worst thing I could have ever done for myself, because it caused me a lot of anxiety and it pushed back these feelings. And I never wrote anything down. I never addressed anything. I went through life pretending that everything was okay. And then as I started getting older and I started working in my field and working with these clients, and I started little by little, especially with the special needs clients, sharing my story and seeing how they appreciated it, and kind of started getting a little proud of it and like, okay, I've overcome this. And I'll never forget one of my clients, she said to me, Sophia, you got to start writing this down. This story is amazing. And I said, yeah, whatever. And then one day it just hit me, and like all of this anxiety kind of hit me. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to start writing it down. And if I cry while I write it, I cry while I write it, but it's going to help me. So what started being something that was therapeutic for me turned into, wow, this needs to be shared with the world, because I want people to know that they can achieve anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So in closing, what advice would you give to others who have hydrocephalus, but also other conditions, epilepsy, autism, have a disability or are struggling? What would be your words of wisdom?
So, okay. Like I said before, I made that promise to myself never to address it. And as a young person going through something, I understand you don't want to address it. And I don't think you should ever be forced to until you're ready. So my first part of advice is always just never force yourself to address anything. Always go at your own pace. Don't be afraid of your anxiety. It's okay to be anxious. You're going through so much. You need to let it out, cry, do whatever you need to do. Get through it first. Know that it's just a bump in the road, that literally anything is possible. It doesn't have to be fitness related. If you have cerebral palsy and you can't hold a pen correctly and you want to draw, you can still draw. Make it happen. You can do it. Don't let anything ever stop you. That's my biggest thing, and that's what I hope this book brings to everyone, and that's what I hope to preach my whole life.
It's amazing.